Hello everyone, welcome to Wisdom's Corner. This is Andy Turner with CFC. If you're looking for a good church home, come see us on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. Come an hour early for our coffee bar, or Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Come an hour early and enjoy some coffee. Well, this week is a little bit more personal of a message, because I know that each one of you has probably been going through the same thing that I have been going through. And so I wanted to talk with you guys tonight about the season of delay. Sometimes we go through these seasons where it just looks like things are not happening, and I've been there and I've heard of a lot of people being there. So I just wanted to talk with you a little bit briefly about that tonight and give you a little bit of insight on it. So, the first verse for tonight is going to come out of Galatians 6:9. And most standard Bibles translate it as such. And in well-doing, do not grow weary, for in due season you will reap a harvest if you do not lose heart. Interesting thing about that translation is it's not entirely accurate. I wanted to point out something tonight that I learned some time ago that gives a little bit better of a translation and a little bit different of a spin on that verse. See, we are conditioned and trained to believe that if we do not lose heart, then we get the harvest. But I wanted to let everybody know that the word if is not in that verse anywhere. It's not in the Greek. It's not in any translation. It is a italicized gloss put there by the translator, well-meaning, of course. They thought that they were doing the translation a favor by smoothing it over and making the verse sound a little more fluid and a little more flowing. But actually in the Greek, and the reason I'm telling you this, you'll find out in a minute, it reads a little more like this. And in well-doing, do not grow weary, for in one's own season you will reap a harvest while not losing heart. See, the interesting thing is the mood there is not in the subjunctive mood. There is no if. There is no conditional adverb there. It goes straight from the verb right into the last sentence. Not giving up or not losing heart, or literally in the Greek, not fainting from exhaustion. The last word there, losing heart, is literally not fainting from exhaustion. And so, what it seems to imply that we're not to quit or grow weary in well-doing, because we will reap a harvest while not losing heart. In other words, the promise is dual. You will get the harvest, and you will not lose heart. And so if you look at the ancient text for that, it implies actually that God is going to help you not lose heart and reap your harvest. That the harvest is on its way. You just simply need to ask help with not losing heart. And so I wanted to show that because a lot of times we get a little tired in doing good. We want to give up. We want to quit for doing the right things or whatnot. And we want to quit doing those consistent little actions that add up to some greater result. And then when we have the first sign of feeling like we might want to quit, we assume that we've lost heart, and that we've fallen out of God's favor, and that we're not going to get our harvest. But what happens here is you develop this very works-based mentality that you have to constantly feel like you're not losing heart in order to get your harvest. And this is not a conditional statement. It actually, if you look at the literary aspect in the ancient language, it actually flows from one thing to another without any qualifier at all. And I wanted to share that with you guys to perhaps bring a little hope to those who feel like you are on the verge of giving up or having a nervous breakdown, because I feel like a lot of people, not just myself, are in this season where you feel like you're about to have a nervous breakdown, but you might be very close to your breakthrough. So I wanted to bring a little insight to that. There are 2 verses in Proverbs I'm going to share with you guys. The first one is Proverbs 13:12, and you've heard this. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but when the desire comes, it is a tree of life. Literally, I think in the Hebrew, it renders something like hope deferred, delayed. Literally, that word in the Hebrew means to drag on. So, and by the way, the word hope here is not the standard word for hope, like a virtue of hope. It's more of what you're expecting. It's an expectancy. So it's kind of like an expected end or some kind of expected outcome or something to that effect. So what it really renders here is expectancy deferred or dragging on makes the heart feel sick. But the desire, when it comes, it is a tree of life. And so we go through these seasons where it seems like your promise is lagging or dragging behind or dragging its feet. And it just seems like things are just not moving at all. But this verse here is here to encourage people to not give up hope. So replace just that expectancy with God's hope. Invite the Spirit of hope to help you engage with what God's expectation is for you in this season, and to keep your heart from becoming heavy or getting sick or wanting to quit or give up. Just a couple of verses down in verse 19, we have another verse. It says, "A desire accomplished is sweet to the soul, but an abomination to fools to depart from evil." In other words, the second half of the verse is talking about fools departing from their path of evil. The first part is kind of interesting, though, because it seems to imply that the desire, same word in the Hebrew as the other verse, accomplished, completed, perfected, is sweet to the soul. So there's going to come this point where your desire will come to pass, whatever God has downloaded into you to desire. And once you step into that desire, it'll be a sweetness to the soul that very few people get to enjoy. Each person's desire or each person's promised land that they step into is going to be a little different. So one person's expectation or promised outcome will be quite different from another's. And you might not be in a season right now where this is happening, but I think we've all been through these seasons where we just feel like we're just going to fall to pieces. And you can't explain it. You just feel like you're just in a funk. And I just wanted to encourage you to not give up on those desires that the Lord has impressed or downloaded into your spirit, but to engage and go up before Him and find out, what's going on. If there's anything that you can do in the natural to expedite things, and if you can't, just come at the problem from a place of rest and honor. Rest and honor will be your number one weapons. Yes, honor is a weapon. Honoring the right people, honoring the right things, honoring the principles of God consistently over and over and over again, till it becomes not second nature, but first nature. And you become acquainted with honoring people, honoring the principles, giving your time to honorable things. And when you do that, you're going to get a result. You're going to get an outcome. You're going to get a harvest of some sort. So I just wanted to encourage people out there who are looking to start a business, or looking to start a family, or looking to find a soulmate, or looking to do something more in ministry, or looking to find a new job or whatever it is you want to do, to take on some new venture or new idea, I just wanted to encourage you guys to not give up on that desire, because the sweetness will come. It's just going to take a little time. And let's see, I want to share a couple more verses here. Two biblical examples of this. Everybody knows the rivalry between Leah and Rachel. You know, Jacob's two wives that he spent 20 plus years working for, and they didn't really care much for each other. There was a rivalry between the two sisters from day one. They even used their maidservants as human shields to compete with one another. But even in that, I like to point out that God is faithful to his promises, even if there is some unfaithfulness on our end, and we're in rivalry, or we're not being faithful, we're not engaging the issues the right way. Let me give you an example of this. Let me find this. It actually starts, this is Genesis chapter 30. Now when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said to Jacob, "Give me children or else I'll die." Kind of an interesting remark. How many of you out there have wanted something so bad you felt like you were going to die? And it was a promise given to you by God. It was something that God has downloaded into your heart. He told you years ago. He sent you umpteen prophetic utterances about it. He's given you dreams. He's given you confirmations. He's done everything to confirm this to you. And yet it still looks like it has not quite come to pass yet. I find Jacob's response here was a little interesting. It says here, and Jacob's anger was aroused against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of your womb?" And so she makes a bitter response. A lot of the times we do this. We'll respond bitterly to an issue which will actually cause a further delay. She uses her maidservant, tells him to go into her maidservant Bilhah, and he conceives not one but two children. Actually, he conceives two children per handmaiden, so that's 4, or per maiden. And he conceives 2 from Rachel and 6 from Leah. Anyway, long story made short, Rachel has the distinction of, I think, having the only child that was conceived outside of Jacob's bondage to Laban. So there was one child, Benjamin, son of my right hand, that was conceived outside of Jacob's servitude to Laban. So there's something very symbolic about the son of my right hand, the Benjamin generation. There's a lot of you out there. You are sons of the right hand. You are a Benjamin generation. You're outside of the norm. And I'm just going to point this out too. This is very interesting what it says here. Let me find this passage because I wanted to. In verse 17 it says, God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a 5th son. Interesting word, listen. Just a couple more verses down, it says here, and God remembered Rachel. Not that God's forgetful, but God remembers his promises. He calls those promises to mind. They've been in deep freeze for years out there at Pluto somewhere, and then all of a sudden they come to pass. And God listened to her. So she gets both. God remembers and listens to her. So God hadn't forgotten her. And she conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. So she called his name Joseph. And she makes an interesting little statement here. It almost seems prophetic. She says, and it said, and the Lord shall add to me another son. That's interesting that she makes a remark that God is going to add another son to her when she has not even had but the first one yet. So not only has she had one son, but she's now believing looking for another son. Two of Jacob's best children, Joseph, through whom the entire family becomes saved through certain destruction. And then Benjamin. Benjamin, Jacob's new favorite child. Not that we should show nepotism to our children. We should love them the same. But it is interesting that God kind of saves the best for last. And so I just wanted to show that to you, because sometimes we will look around and say, well, why haven't you done this for me? Or if only that person had given me that promotion, or given me that position, or if I had just gotten that, or if that person had hired me, or if I had married such and such, or whatever. And we start looking for a cause to our promise not coming to pass, thinking that it's been stillborn, or thinking that it's miscarried. But God is remembering. It's just one of those, 2 steps back, 1 step forward kind of deals. And so I just wanted to encourage you to step into this. And if you guys out there have promises that you've just been sitting on the edge of your seat for years, I really encourage you to get out your notebooks, get out your prophetic words, get back in there with God and start engaging with Him about these things and asking Him to show you what is going on with that. Last example was Hannah, and it's in the book of 1 Samuel, where she goes, it actually says here, so Hannah arose after they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh. Now Eli, the priest, was sitting on the seat by the doorpost, interesting threshold remark, of the tabernacle of the Lord. And she was in bitterness of soul and prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. And she made a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your maidservant and remember me and not forget. So there's a balance there between not forgetting and remembering. Interesting. 2 different principles playing together. But will give your maidservant a male child. She's very specific about what she wants. Not a female, but she's very specific. Then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall come upon his head. Promising things about his nature before he's even born yet. And so anyway, everybody knows the story. Eli thinks she's been drinking, and she convinces him, no, I have not been drinking. My nerves are tore slam up. I want this so bad, I don't know what to do. And Eli says, God has granted your request, go home. We find later that the very first thing she does when she goes home, she finds her husband and she knows him intimately. Sounds to me like she had a promise on her heart and mind. She had faith, so she went home and did something with and about the prophetic word that was given to her through, in this case, through a priest. Although he acted very prophetically in this particular instance. So she took a step of faith and acted on what God said, went home, knew her husband, and conceived Samuel. And everybody knows about Samuel. She ended up, long story made short, having 5 more children through all that. But I say that, and I use children as an example in this particular analogy, because basically, sometimes the promises really just seem outside of our grip, outside of our control, outside of anything we can do to make them happen. But I wanted to tell you, some of you out there have been given clear instructions by God to do something. You were given a prophetic word, and then you were told by God to do something or step out. And I wanted to encourage those who are watching to do what God said. If God said do A, then go do A. Because sometimes a prophetic word might have a condition to it, and sometimes it may not. Sometimes they're going to come to pass no matter what you do. But if God gives you a prophetic word and then gives you some instructions along with that, sometimes there is a principle that goes along with the promise, and you have to honor the principle in order to get the promise. So I wanted to share that with you guys. Quick story. I was listening to a podcast just a couple of days ago woman was telling a story about how she wanted children very bad. Her and her husband had been trying for 4 years. Who's it? Who's her? Anyway, she got a prophetic word about having some children. In fact, I think it was 2 children. But she was told that she would have a boy and a girl, I believe. Well, she got excited, and the first child was a miscarriage. And she was like, oh my God, like, what's going on, Lord? Like, you told me that this was going to come to pass. What am I doing? So anyway, she had some engagements with the Lord. The Lord showed her some dreams and things like that. Well, she thought that one gender was going to be born before the other, but it ended up being the other gender first. And my mind immediately went, I'm like, okay, well, if he gave you the girl first, for instance, then that means you have to get the boy because he promised you a boy. So you're going to get 2 children out of the deal. So God, anyway, long story made short, God kept his end of the bargain. She ended up having 2 children. And I've heard countless stories like this. And so I wanted to encourage each and every one of you that whatever you're believing for, whatever your promise is, even if it seems like it's been many seasons over and it has not come to pass yet, I just wanted to encourage you to step into the Lord, engage the Lord, go up before him, find out what you need to do, if anything, what you need to say, if anything. Ask God for a specific wisdom download. And by the way, some of you are in a season where you are being fired. It's like pottery before it's put into the kiln. It's final time to be hardened. And I know a lot of you, you're like, oh my God, I've been stretched, I've been beaten, I've been perplexed, and now I got to go through fire. But there's just a small season where the pressure and the fire are up, and it just makes the promise solid. And I wanted to encourage each and every one of you today to not shy away from being put in the oven. It would be against God's better interest to take and leave gold in the furnace or silver in the refiner's fire longer than it's necessary, because you would burn off the product and not the dross and the slag on top. God would not want to destroy what he's trying to create through you. But there is sometimes a firing or a smelting process that occurs, and it feels like God is destroying you. You're just like, oh my God, if you love me, please quit loving me. Please stop. But there is a point in which you step into that burning, that firing process, and you're brought out something that's completely different in nature. So whatever you guys are doing out there, just please promise yourself that you're not going to give up. Stand on God's word, stand on God's promises, whatever they are, and don't give up, don't quit, don't stop trying. And so with that being said, I'm going to leave off with that. And I just wanted to drop that out on a personal end, and as well for everybody out there. Don't give up. Do not grow weary. You will get your harvest, and you will not faint or lose heart. That's God's promise to you. This is Andy from Wisdom's Corner here at CFC. Hope to meet you guys real soon. We'll make you right at home. Thank you guys. You have a blessed one. Good night.